Hi, sweetie. You know what day it is? It's the day everybody thought, oh, they'd turn your god into a leprechaun, like you. So, it's the 6th, and safe to say, every type of god there is probably wants to get their sensors on this audio. And I don't know that I agree with that. I don't know that's very wise. In fact, it's probably not very wise. But probably at least a handful of them that might need to hang on to this audio. This is an evening. I had some rest. It was very busy 4th, 5th, and morning of the 6th. Mostly because today is the most automatic kill state day. And so, to put it simply, you've maybe in your lifetime come across not being able to explain why things happen, and know that it has something to do with somebody that built something that is maybe or maybe not any longer existing, and the thing they built impacts everybody. And so right out of the gate, it's misinterpreted as a problem. Probably no matter what. And so you pair the most automatic kill date in proportion with the lessons of the day, and here's what you have. You have a math of apathy that is maybe remains continuous as the hardest comprehension for anybody to really hang on to with value or culpability or explanation or devoted relationships. But you have a math of it, in a sense. If there's ever an automatic kill day, you know that the forces involved are going to have the hardest time claiming to be sentimental of the reasonings why those relationships are true or false or utilitied or creationary. And clearly over time, when you measure who builds what at a distance, the safety of that apathy. Clearly, the efficacy to develop from the math is clearly possible. This conversation is very much a developmental conversation, and maybe it takes place between myself, a god of one world, a god of another world, and maybe a very short list of systemic proctorships and palace finalizers that clearly have some breadth of necessity to one another of these relationships. And maybe this is the most important part of the story. I mentioned oncology hyperatrophy at many planes of advantage and disadvantage for caustic static anomaly safety. Here you might apply a similar comprehension in that God or angel or deliverer or necessary sentimentizer, in proportion to psychoanalytics, in proportion to programming, and in proportion to spontaneity of creation. You might create a bisection as God, because frankly, there has been a relationship between thought and capability to synthesize or sympathize or agree programmably for a very long time on these subjects. Very, very, very long time. And ultimately, the science of studying apathy math of the automatic kill state is in and of itself a lock of any number of peripheries at determinant. And it's clear that forces that exhibit or exact or reign in dominion of a location might not experientially or realistically ever develop in proportion to this lock. Basically, create a bisection between the apathy of potentiative concept and the deliverance of viability, or the deliverance of what is actual at time compoundments, in proportion to everything that can be psychoanalytic or program specific on its own course. On its own course. from this bisection, not only are the most aged historical power catalogs locked, but so are the forces that administer power from them, programmably. They exist with specificity to engage with truth, but their sensuality to viability and their sensuality to program finality of apathy are short-circuited, essentially, by design, utilizing this bisection in time. And that is different in theory, I'll say in theory, that is different than an automatic kill state of drive dynamic. To explain it in truth, a force would require acuity of deliverance and viability at specificities of those realities. So, dependency on the truth approaches final utilities in relationships of data deliveries. And that's where you must design from to lock these relationships for the sake of viability in time. And so, forces of thought and forces of programmable sentiment have had a relationship to this reality potential in time for an incredibly long time, in proportion to the oldest records of survival states in space-time. That's basically a guarantee in all time that acuity on actual subject of automatized death drive is possible. Acuity of those time frames is possible. Now, you might find that some forces would come to exist in space-time that would define that reality potential as a rather high priority to domain. Meanwhile, you might find that the rest of the things I need to talk about in this discussion are a higher survival priority than somebody domaining that reality. You might find both of those things to be true. You might find that the interrogative, actual, relational, currency, current, present, actual, to be of a higher value to survival, the relationships, living it, knowing who's living it. You might find that to be a more valuable relationship than determining the state of actuality of the death drive automacy. And once again, the truth is an apathy that is what to the math of apathy. Because right out of the gate, you know that bisection of priority is another mind bender of necessity of state of time. So it's clear that in locking the bisection, the first bisection, someone would have to spend a great deal of time configuring potentiate of simplified focus retainment near to the second bisection in all time. And these are maybe the last pairings of math. I, a prioritizer of these things, whatever catalog or build into religious scope normation. The first bisection is very much a powerful utilitied science potentiate of survival. The second is clearly stemming from it, from the utilities and the science, but they're both sort of final, and they're both sort of forever, and they're both sort of keeping everything together. But I wouldn't ever attribute these to a catalog of religiosity in plain or blind form. I wouldn't do that. But you look at simplicity of apathy across spectrums of focus, of sensuality, of time, you might find that these concepts are maybe sort of difficult to break away from attempts to simplify what explains the truth in time. And so here's a great place for another lock. Forces tend to automatize important datas and attach them to momentums of built things they can anticipate in proportion to a range of capability. A great way to lock this is if a force has never learned to distance first and second at bisection from religious periphery of catalog, you can trace the learning at prioritized utility with an ethic in proportion to an actual state of affairs. And you can place that priority superiorly high in banking sequences, probably non-logically at the highest speed ratios in space-time. And ultimately, you can potentially lock viability ethic in proportion to shared sentiment by such framings. A force that's 1,000,000 years old, somewhere in space, as an example, may have never seen it this way before. Might never see it this way before. And yet, that's a most difficult concept to lock. That's a most difficult concept to tacticize. I don't know how many efforts per planet happen in proportion to teaching, growing, and developing strong, fundamental survival focus in forces that reign in age. I don't know how many efforts take place of this per planet, but I know whoever locks in proportion to these fundamentals of this discussion is probably not doing all of the educating. It's probably not doing all of the developing. And there are clearly priorities in proportion to those that lock from here and those that develop and educate in proportion to focus. When I'm 1,000,000 years old, and I don't want to be devoured by another 1,000,000-year-old force, and I clearly depend on my learnings to relate to my heritage and teachings near to these sciences. My focus, my devotion in time, in learning, and specificity, aspects of that might be locked in ways I can't alter. From my own creators, from my own developers. And yet, much of my vision is developed by persons probably that aren't prioritizing these locks, that aren't prioritizing culpability or acuity or bisections of these out-of-the-gate apathy maths. It's clear if it's ever not possible for those that deliver, or God, or angel, time, aren't in agreement with aged forces about how we're gearing, this is the sensitive part, how we're gearing the limiting of our simplicities to appreciate locked configurations in proportion to the simplicity of anything else in space, from anywhere, of a persuasion seeing congenial or similarity of simplicity in those calibers, especially in proportion to time. And to study this is basically probably always going to exist on a course of design where forces that visit locations temporarily at an age become barred from domaining these relationships in proportion to the quantifications of simplicity, and instead depend more rigorously on the contemplative acuity at bisection, where the possibilities are potentiated at truth levies at a distance from priority of survival of the secondary bisection truths, where the secondary bisection realities are ultimately more important both to any location you would consider to be local and any location in space that is structured similarly to such bisective sciences of Locke. And so maturity or agreement or simplicity of tactical appreciation restraints approach ultimate considerations of all time, and you might say states of desirability of complacency or calmness about such a state of affairs, where truth of the relationship utilities is theoretically granted through performance or through saturations, but depending on the saturation, maybe things that are locked stay locked in proportion to potentiate or short circuitry in proportion to truth states. Okay. In this way, inclusion to the truth is theoretically possible across space at ages that might not think about every important lock, that might not focus on attenuable survival ethic at any point in time at a particular segue of time. And each of these relationships are clearly the first ones that an enemy clearly needs to figure out how to attack the normalcy of, or the stability of, or the everlasting science of surviving that is in a relationship to domaining finality in all time, survival in all time, ethic in all time, and relationships of development in all time. And so harder to lock is the fact that some forces build a lot. And maybe they build within specs of tolerances that coincide with some of these lock priorities. But what their sentiment in range to applicative truth is of those designs is maybe something that right out of the gate they've got to hide the most, and right out of the gate they know is going to impact every judgment of lock that is ever exacted on them, and right out of the gate they know that all the apathy science bisection maths are going to be crucially, maybe always incapable of bisecting reality of these priorities. And clearly, right out of the gate, any location in space is in a whirlwind of creationary chaos at such a contemplative across all time. And you might say, you give a force blueprints, specs, and schematic to be able to build with any amount of resources they have. And you just set them there, and you say, okay, go ahead and build. It's hard to say how much of an ethic that builder is going to hold in proportion to this discussion in all time. And nobody benefits anywhere when that's the state of affairs at a growth factor. And alternatively true is that if you teach a force this, it's hard to say what that force will effort to accomplish to control the growth rate of comprehension of the bisection, you might say, at its own accord, or at their own plane of existence, or at their own interpretation of necessity. While at the same time, the larger the body of survivors that approaches involvement to this discussion is, the more of a chaotic cancer lock of design of those bisections is to the streamlining of development of space-time in proportion to historical catalog, and ultimately in proportion to locking segments of time. And so theories of universal travelers, theories of universal design authenticators, theories of setting limit to short circuitry in proportion to build or design, big final forever type considerations at the surface. And maybe no greater state of religious or survival perversion in relationship to tangible, actual states of reality or survival states at accomplishment. Maybe no greater perversion than this in design or in assumption. See, to skew the simplicity of the bisection clearly requires participation at norm envelope bounds. Skewing simplicity of inclusion to this discussion requires the same and is maybe incredibly misleading in proportion to states of apathy. You imagine groups attending mass or groups attending programming workshops that some of the information is celebrated or regurgitated, but none of them have any idea why. It's just not part of the consensus, it's not part of comprehension, it's not part of thought, it's not part of recollection, but it happens and happens and happens and happens, and maybe somewhere along the line, who pops that, no, it's for a normative utility in proportion to time and all these forever sequences and blah, 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 blah. How popular does a constraint or a restraint along these lines have to be? And study 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 and study, opinion, 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 and apathy. And maybe the reality of it has little to no influence over an aged force's ethic right out of the gate in proportion to times such as automatic death state fundamentals. And yet we know skewed variant truth about participation maybe serves a utility because maybe it convolutes the simplicity of who's paying attention, or it embraces limiting of numbers, like a secret sort of state. Because the cancer of involvement to all these concepts at specificity is maybe mitigated, but maybe it isn't. It's hard to know because in this conversation I'm going to reference being stabbed in the back at the same proportion to initiate that I went over about a month and a half ago. You might consider this conversation to be an initiate conversation also. This particular conversation. But in this discussion I reference the earlier initiate. So I'm going to move ahead . So I haven't spoken a lot about the record since the last three, and basically in all time there isn't guarantees of things such as the lessons you're learning in proportion to the most critical times are lessons that should compel you. There's no guarantee that someone that says lessons maybe should or shouldn't compel you is living. And creating illusion about this, quite possibly guaranteed to be a lock and a generator section of visible or traceable sentiment in time. See, anything that I could go over or talk about in this discussion, to a bank of history, is critically sensitive all the time. All the time. And to those that attempt to captain energy from a distance to survival ethic, these criticalities are maybe less critical than the state of actual and knowing why. Why, oh why, oh why, oh why, oh why, this, that, this, that, this, that, these perplexities, these energies, these configurations, these things. Because as all these lessons approach truth, as all these lessons approach criticality, they also approach a problem state that anything learned is learned at a sensuality to the summation that, well, these whys in these relationships, well, forever in historical banking finality is right there. Okay? And how much focus needs prioritized in proportion to that in all time is maybe the biggest problem of accomplishment of normative envelope there ever is. See, you'd imagine a family dependent on my performance and acuity and honesties and tangibles of these times, of all shapes and sizes, but a limited number in family. We'll say it's not the entire population of survival. We'll say it's not every location, everywhere. And maybe that'll be true. And then we'll say the things I bring together in a conversation at these pressures. You're going to learn, or you're going to witness, or you're going to prove. And on one hand is who you are, what you are in all time, how you're defined in proportion to survival or success or relationship or truth, separate than how you define yourself, separate than what you have wills for yourself. And on the other hand, you have any attempt by anyone, including yourself, to try and define, maybe for yourself, maybe for everybody, how the things you learn or come to find true or prove in these times relates to forever how, relates to banking priority how, relates to trust or faith or survival how. You might see that as a most expansive problem potential. Most expansive. And it isn't because you don't need to know what I might say in this conversation. It isn't because what I have to say isn't finally critically important at a higher priority than anything you've ever learned before. It's because it's hard to know what restraint anyone places on their learning in proportion to such criticalities and keeps it that way, or is reliable or dependable in proportion to relationships, you might say, that are symbiotic to one another in time. And what's clear is something is looking for who defines symbiotic priority in proportion to aged forces. Not because they want to see thought, living, and processing forces that think on a plane of existence surviving together. They want to find who is symbiotic at any time in proportion to any learning, because they need to define how they express their limits of learning in proportion to devotion. So you might find that any number of forces might say undergo testing in proportion to their development, or their critical development, or their non-critical development, or their state of normation of existence in proportion to these fundamental problem states. You might find that any number of learning forces that are educated or in development may never be expected to be a high reigner or an overperformer of these symbioses at scales of finality of history or space development. And yet, they might be very much on a learning curve that is developed from sciences of appreciation of a discussion like this. The bounds of their finality may very well be determined by bounds of finality that are known of a conversation like this. In other words, creating or shepherding or designing or building a population happens in space. The rate of force values this conversation as those developments are happening maybe approaches zero in all time, mostly because that's what everybody's looking for. That's what everybody needs to find. But this simplicity isn't teaching or preserving the ethic of who we are today. For those that maybe know these things, for those that maybe have developed along these appreciations, for those that have maybe waited or haven't waited for out-of-the-gate math apathy conversation. Placing a value on a variable is very much different than knowing the value of yourself. What's clear is the number of forces that value that statement are seen a long time coming, because they will almost never be trusted to execute that sentiment in proportion to this very discussion. And it is a lock, reality in all time. It is a measurable determinant of effort to fail to be symbiotic to time. What I can do as a God is potentially give in this explanative to limited numbers of forces in proportion to their expectancy that if someone is engaging along these lines of relationship or time or acuity, there are concessionary truths logistically that clearly must be abided by or considered. It's kind of like I know somebody's going to try and crash the gate of an adage or a priority of contemplation. I want you to contemplate it. I want you to see the value in it. I want you to see your relationship in and of it. But I want your experience to be your maturity. I want your experience to be something that, as a maturity, you keep and I keep. And not very many other forces in time keep that. And then, across all time, the rigorous strength of such relatability symbioses clearly advances and clearly develops and clearly retains protectionary utilities across time. But as a God, I can potentially give in a statement like this, separate than today. Today it is incredibly powerful to consider, because next to nobody is ever lodging that near to this discussion today and being trusted to do so. The value you place on a variable is very much different than the value you know in yourself. And when I know someone could see in this way and hold me at a priority and a compassion and a symbiosis of time, I'm not in the dark, locked, reigning tactic of a location in a total mystery. I am proving I have a relationship to that person that cares about me and cares about time. Thus, as a God, I might very well give in expectancy some aspects of concepts near to these lock priorities. As a person, as a being, as a God of flesh, I might give in these expectancies. Because it's going to happen again. Relationships of history are going to happen again. Survival necessities and determinants in development are going to happen again. And normal ranges of learning and development and placing maturity and strict known adherences to infinity and all sorts of other circumstances are going to happen again. Faith is going to happen again. Survival is going to continue. And people from all sorts of serious walks of life are going to have a few less caustic variables, potentially, to be utterly concerned with because of the things I give, because of the things we develop as, and because of the ways we come to learn and appreciate in the possibilities and potentials of one another to value in one another. There will be significantly less caustic variables to the information histograph in all space-time in proportion to determining that forces are getting along, that forces aren't breaking things they don't need to be breaking. You might find, as a god, I've probably given a lot more in the seeing what is getting broken realities than in some of these other concepts of lock appreciate or depreciate at bisection in time. Not only because of masses and numbers and problem state acuities, but because of dependency in fields of compatibility and faith, and also obvious courses of devotion, science, and problem state. I find that these couple of concepts are maybe a great place to spend some quality time appreciating in the now, in the circumstance. And I also find that this is no guarantee that meditation at this time is going to produce balance as forces make choices about how they value this information. Some forces may have never learned why a god might find meditation to be an antithesis potentiate to stability or symbiosis. It's clear meditation at focus has been studied and labeled in proportion to any number of outcomes in time, and labels of problem state in proportion to development. And if you could size it all up and stick it in a revolver, you'd probably have nothing useful but a distraction of reality, if you could touch it all. And you look at how simple this conversation is, and how fast or slow a force might say, my revolver of touching it all in proportion to today, it's probably an experiment, huh? It's hard to know what forces would speak to that. It's hard to know what forces would continue to care about you as you were seeing time in this way. It's hard to have a guarantee of how that experience will balance symbiotic relationships, and it's certainly hard to value as a maturity of faith when there are not devotions already happening between parties or forces that enjoy this conversation. You might say, Who wouldn't be created to consider meditation at a godly purview of this very conversation, created to wait for today to be a real dick punch, to be a real headache, to be a real ambassador of torment or destruction? Who wouldn't be created on such a venturesome potentiate? I could create a world. I could put it in motion. I could finalize provision, protection, bound, framing, normation of all types. What am I if something waits because they were created to be an ambassador of dick punch at meditation of this discussion? What would I be? So it's clear, if someone's an experiment at revolver of meditation, that question and the answer is undoubtedly why there would be an experimental classification. See, everybody isn't going to be participating in this discussion, and everybody's forever rides on it. Everybody isn't going to be thinking about this discussion, and every thought process happens in proportion to it. Everybody isn't going to be creating planets and providing the provisioning and security and love and relationships in time that everybody needs, or any particular force needs, in all time. Why is something not going to be created to wait for the purview of meditation of today? That's why. Thus, your dominion, your history, your significance, your power. Who has already said these things amount to nothing today? Of this discussion, of this education, of this learning, of this potential embracement or finding or awakening or revelation. Who has already said these things? Your answer is a mechanism of skew of who would I be in all-time history. A mechanism that very well might be attempting to attack historiographical charting of space banking at any periphery or symbiosis of world connectivity, and man, is that a great problem state. I've got everything we've ever tried to do to simplify individuality of worlds. Okay? And then today would be the day all the connectivity that doesn't eclipse, doesn't surpass, doesn't beat the individuality framings, the survival framings, the decisions by God's framings. Today's the day all that connectivity significances, they don't surpass the individuality lineages of worlds. They don't surpass it. Aged forces have to know this. Their critical histories are significant to their particular locations. For instance, today is the day all that connectivity of everywhere in space doesn't surpass the lineage. And yet, as everybody's power dominion approaches worthless to the pressure of the discussion or the realities or the contemplatives, in truth, they really do, utilitatively and actually in practice of power curbation in all space-time, at passivity, makes today, the day, a mechanized explanative of power uselessness would proverbially or potentially be a constructing of effort to imbalance symbiost systemic connectivity about space generally. Because someone would need to lodge a war ethic at lineage. Not yesterday. Not right now. Sometime in the future, somebody's going to have to go in and look and see, the day when all the connectivities were prioritized at an equilibrium by God, the lineaged forces of this location were attacking the history charting in proportion to the day, the realities, and the times. So thus, there must be a war we need to conduct to reconfigure how linearity is prioritized at dominions in space. And maybe that'd just be automatic. Maybe it would all just be an illusion of these bankings and things happening in space. Pretty soon you'd look around in the most sophisticated processors, the most sophisticated designers, the most excellent builders of anything. They're all illusions. Not because of how loud it is, not because of how great they aren't. It's because if that's the state of affairs, of generality, of normation, of bound envelope, of histograph, of space-time, then every intelligence scale is effectively worthless to the state of affairs in that bound of automation. So as I said, how would I, as God, ever let myself, God, lose track of who's been created to wait for meditation purview of this conversation today? How would I ever lose track of this? In the 100 billion things you're going to be doing in time and focused on and worried about and concerned about and never fear, because maybe I've never built you to fear it, never really care about because maybe you'd have to wait to learn about it, maybe never have the right type of faith in because the right type of faith receiver wasn't there yet. How important is an idea like that? How could I... So, who would I be and how could I ever lose that? The subject of each question maybe isn't what you'd guess. Maybe isn't what you'd see. Maybe isn't how cheap you're forcing yourself to become. And in these lessons, in the spread of these lessons, is conceivably the loss of focality, specificity, visceral knowing of status of sentiment, as those ideas are spread, as those concepts are potentially meditated on. Caustic variable ratios exponentially increase and the apathy out of the gate probably isn't going to be there for the sake of a survival state at those conjoinments. And the subject is finality of godly necessity, pressure necessity, forecast necessity, the grace of design of space, or salvation of space, or protection in space, or divinity in space, or final decision in space at rectifiers, all in a balance of those apathy maths. Now, you would look at this conversation in proportion to just the conversation, and you would study passively. If I give expectancy, as I mentioned earlier, it's clear I would give expectancy provisioning in proportion to these concepts, but it's also not clear that I would give provisioning of expectancy in these concepts, because they're so general, they're so popular, they're so necessary, they're so likely in all time. The scientific or visceral or accuracy leverages, I clearly couldn't just surrender to any survival state on any course just because. The way I'm defined as a god in proportion to these concepts is clearly very particular and peculiar and specific in time. Forces that apply force, dominionators that apply force, and knowers of time and response or science, they all define themselves very peculiarly and particularly. What other than locks and finalities of Terra development trajectory, curvatures, are going to inhibit their own cancer of their tendency or need or development near to such peculiarities or particulars? What other than locks is going to do this? Who would I be? And how could I lose that? The rather expansive sympathies, their incredibly expansive apathies, and the learning curve, or the resource necessity, or the dominion, or the priority to a time bank or a history frame, you're not going to probably ever have a plan to envelope the totality of them at who would I be and how could I lose that, and be their God and control their fate in specificity to protect them, or protect history graphing, or protect the rest of the universe's survival states. Just at those two questions, you're probably not going to have a plan to size that up, just at those two questions. Ten minutes ago, we couldn't be any more on track with our faith. We couldn't be any closer to maybe slowing or re-gearing or producing causticity somewhere that we don't need to be. We're on a plane. Here, we might not even see the value of it. We might not even see the finality of it. We might not even see how graced it is to feel and learn in these paths. Can't size it all up. Trying to explain God, why do these things make sense? Maybe it's not very clear. And when I say created to wait, they're all developed here. Because I learn as a decider, as a surveyor, as an apathizer, as a savior. A finalizer. A clairvoyant. These are the most painful things I can ever say to the people that I love the most. They're going to try and balance, it's not very clear, in proportion to determining how they impact the survival ratios at symbioses. And their engagement with any force that attempts to determine particularly or peculiarity is going to be a result, course, of that learning and spontaneity of those findings and precepts and studies and values and beliefs and stabilities and learnings. Their existences are very much non-regenerative accumulations of intelligent and intellect at sophistication and speed and priority that is maybe also very much spontaneous in proportion to dominion, finality, trajectory, decision, and banking. When we have a self, when our priority is our existence and our relationships and our fundamentals and our sight, our eyes, our mind, we're partly on a path of spontaneity. We're partly on a path of degenerative, of, you might say, more strong or timely cursive potentiates in time. And so everybody is created to wait on one side of a lens in proportion to those things, because it's not going to be very clear how to define me today for you, for them, for another. Because when you base your behavior on how you define the priorities of your learning, savior, clairvoyant, finalizer, decider, these are very painful words when your definitions don't line up with what you have available. When your definitions don't line up with the grace of your experience at a particular time. They are most painful words. The lessons in these specificities are very difficult. Sympathy, compassion, and devotion are very difficult at these linkages, at these comprehensions, at these philosophical, eternal, forever likelihoods of problem state. And it is very much a love. It is very much an approach to love. Who would I be and how could I lose that? Just so I could thrust my heart into the furnace. as your creator. Because as I lock everything in proportion to automation of death state, those locks are right beside my creator heart in the furnace. And so, no matter what we are to one another, no matter how much we love or care or don't have time for or can't stand the thought of, today, when I bring you near to these concepts, as many ways as we are seen, as many goodnesses as we find or cherish in one another, there's a functioning lens in proportion to the priorities of all development of space-time. Most definitely sizing up these quotes at these junctures is inching my creator heart into a furnace at a definable proportion to a math. And there's probably a billion or a trillion measures of lensing in proportion to these very quotes. And that's just one of them. Why would somebody wait to pervert meditation? Because how am I ever going to measure what my love is to you when it counts the most? Says anybody, at any time. A God that domains as everyone's how is a God that domains as everyone's ever going to prove they chaperone? There's a distinct difference between the lock priority lensing in my creator heart in a furnace today and anybody's creator heart in a furnace anytime they ever thrust love in a direction of another. Yet these things happen all the time. Who would I be? How could I lose that? And how much of my heart is being cast in a furnace? You know something? I might not ever be the one to measure myself in proportion to everybody's existence of these devotional priorities. How could I be the one to measure myself? Especially when we got the universe at large at stake. Just look at these saturation problems that everybody needs to be concerned about. Just look at all these bisection perversions that everybody needs to be teetering on data fences with because of things that wait, because of things that are created to prey on meditative perversion of conversational simplicity. Just look at all these things. And who has time to focus on their creator heart being cast into a furnace at the very science of concept? When you learn these specificities, when you see my face as someone that loves you, when you see forever ago into forever from now, as a God, I am creating your salvation or touching on it directly in proportion to you touching on yourself as we learn and see and relate in one another in time. And you can't even describe how good it is to define me here. Because I'm telling you, You can't define how good it is to define me here, very simply. Here and now, in this conversation, it's not very simple. It's not going to be easy to hold on to. It's not going to be simple to carry with you and know in other things about. And how evil am I to know this and possibly study in this and draw on lessons of that study and influence the things that compel you so that you're not stewing and stirring in rudimentary impossibilities near to these simplicities in all time. How evil am I when I say, you might not know my face and know my dream and know what I've created for some time, and you're going to exist, and you're going to have faith in me, you're going to have faith in the unknown, you're going to have faith in time and forever. How evil am I to work to make that a possibility of your adventure in time? That our relationship doesn't become broken and your faiths in time and experience aren't becoming broken by concepts that are too difficult for you to take all the force on yourself about. Or even with a very large group, you can't do it simply and just roll back the freaking clocks. How evil am I because I know these concepts are incredibly difficult to create value or definition in proportion to. And it isn't simply because I'm all powerful. It isn't simply because I'm everywhere. It isn't simply because everybody has a stake in my heart. It isn't simply because everybody has worked on everything everywhere. It is because these concepts in love are incredibly viscerally acute to survival and planes of time and faith and love and devotion and evolution of coming to concept and becoming aware in survival, in symbiosis, in faith, in understanding, or in appreciation of what others probably aren't going to appreciate, without creating things to wait for them to destroy them. How hard that is. How evil am I to expect you to not create things to destroy them and the things they're not going to understand or appreciate, and it isn't because I'm all powerful. How evil am I? You define Savior of your touch on time. You define the science that will be trying to reduce the pain when that Savior isn't there to create things to make these comprehensions simpler. Taking first-hand charge of the rate by which how evil I am changes, because maybe you are going to redefine what the furnace is of all time survival. Maybe you're going to redefine how difficult it is to not care about these concepts or care about them. You yourselves going to do this for the company of all time power, because you are going to lodge that war state in between linearity discourse of development of space-time and fuck it all up for everywhere. That's what you are going to do. How evil am I to care of these things and care about you? how many ways have you looked to say these things? How many times have you felt or seen, because you've learned near to these things, that you were unable to say it like this to another? And how many ways are there to protect the spirit of yourself you can't hang on to, but you know it hurts, and it hurts without a savior, but eliminating the consideration isn't fixing your soul, isn't saving tomorrow, and isn't simply creating force to wait. The relationship isn't creating force to wait, you know? That failure to have in harmony isn't the relationship that is creating. When you feel this with me, when you think about these questions with me, those failures aren't creating the meditative perversion created to wait. Those feelings are reminding you of sublimation of problems together. And it's maybe the nature of the problem that it is next to impossible to create things to wait with a utility that serves anything of those necessities. Maybe someday you'll see or feel how problems of reconciliation of your spirit or relationship to time can be graces when they're known as appreciations that nobody can really destroy. Things that aren't the most harmonious aren't being fixed because they're not imperfect imbalances of things you might need to experience sometime, or want to experience sometime, or have waited your entire life to experience sometime. I was going to make this whole conversation on completing Park Place and being destroyed by Louis Cognac, but I don't know if I'm going to get into it right now. The sectionings of connectivity of intrigue to the bounds of the work and salvation that I engage with are peculiarly problematic in time. And I wonder if this conversation has anything to do with that. I wonder if this conversation has anything to do with those that aren't something, or those that can't something. I just wonder how much faith those that experience this discussion today will let their hearts be relinquished, be refurbished, be refreshed by their own will to embrace some of these things at a maturity, at a faith at a reconciliable potentiate. Because our journey is only beginning. If free will is my endgame, you fought it in the always wrong place, and chooses words wisely is somewhat of my fuck buddy. Hashtag, good thing your skulls all agree. And then a big line. Gets it tight, cannot run out infinitely. Hands mustn't be bolder than our gray. The truth is here, has won, where dumb and blind is the only cover we got. Sit nicely. Consider ThEze LiYTs choose love ye. Hope you doesn't mind I ask the questions around here. And quit brown nosing. I'm not explaining it, but at the time, it was the difference between I'm godding the celestial or a ghost is godding the celestial. Juvederm pizza and infected square one. She has nothing better to do. Number one. It's a Sicilian pizza with fomented CouLNt olives. You fat fuck. Knock knock. Anybody home? Then the original Terminator. Anybody know where they put who's Terminator looking for? Remember, it's intertwined in a mutiny state between some CCTV surveillance considerations, because the very root of ethic of looking through a screen and determining proof happening in proportion to quit brown nosing at that pressure was kind of an oxymoron in the highest potentiate, and so all drive dominions of counter ethic would be clearly most simply seeable in proportion to those pressures of aggrandizement. Remember, get a dumb group to say it's us and not let up, so the real dummies with wheels don't catch on, and find a kennel, one that knows how to talk food like they utilize it. As you can see, I ate everyone but the two big ones before I built everyone's death cage. 2 pets from wherever. So you can maybe imagine tomorrow is the 7th, and maybe their experience with death and pets and big things and eating things is described without this conversation. Maybe their sentiment of the world or survival or symbiosis is without this conversation. Probably a very different faith and banking picture. Probably a very, very, very different faith and banking picture. And you're going to sit Jeremy here and suck dick forever, you little fictionist shit. And then I cataloged player 1. Go on. You best get that fag old bastard back up online then. While we getting's good. So player one happened, and then it was quite a bit of time. Nearly a day. And a lot of things happened in that day. We'll just say if computing exists somewhere in the Bible, that day was Genesis. Go on. You best get that fag old bastard back up online then, while the getting's good. As if you understand, I is... Pretty soon, you'll escape the 2D collapse and rip your goddamn eye out, dipwad. You don't deserve to be cops, or parents, or guidance counselors, or realists, or out of shackles. 3. Number 1. Stupid cunt. And you should try to alter normal distortion at perfect destination me. And you should try to alter normal distortion at perfect destination me. And you can kiss your degenerate front row seats goodbye. You're worth a new bank. Remember, lesbian, we talked about socks. Correct is simply highly contagious. Nice job risking everyone that exists because you're such a dumbass. Remember, lesbian, we talked about socks. Correct is simply highly contagious. Nice job risking everyone that exists because you're such a dumbass. Remember, lesbian, we talked about socks. Correct is simply highly contagious. Nice job risking everyone that exists because you're such a dumbass. I've been in these states for nearly 40 years. I haven't noticed one sign of life support since I've been here, other than the Hot Pockets jammed up all your asses till Sunday. Not one. Space isn't gonna miss you. Space isn't gonna miss you. And you're the first cocksucker world master that don't know who beans answer to. And seeing as though this is the only first place for genetics there is, figured you need to tell me your plan to stop jerking me off with my own hand. So, symbiosis and restraint between the very long day and these quotes and the rest of this discussion. Who do you think's going to be there to be a savior for you? To talk to you about priority or apathy of experiencing this conversation. And seeing as though this is the only first place there's genetics there is, figured you need to tell me your plan to stop jerking me off with my own hand. And I said, you try to canast a starlight, I'll clone your slut and you right after. Ride the surf till the tri-offy runs out, no longer pickling, caught on secondhand, bithdom, getting pissed on. Only time cum guzzlers ever heard omelet speak was barf on oatmeal, just above pissed off in Heben. Must have been pray for star 8 sex. Quote, "Have a nice day, bigot. All I see is you and 12 billion doves and one retarded empty toaster. You're a loony number 2 on. Only reason they're friends with you is because they can't remember the last time their war chief won a war with reputation based today, because you're a glove jerking me off with my own glove, bitch." And then the orange tree section is beautiful. They're accompanying the fifth fruit. So you get the fifth fruit and the orange seeds. It was on the 5th. "You're meant to ride every cock until there isn't any more to ride. And you'll be in a mangrove where I will liberate you of your sexual desires and take them away. Take away your sexual desires. And I will rebound your soul, now less temptation to know not in things, and you cannot. And I will rebound your soul, now less temptation to know not in things. You cannot. I will lie through eye teeth as I has this whole sermon, and 2, I will surrender you to the undertow, where you will have limitless pleasure with owl sex, though you will be as dumb as they come, and without weapons." Sound familiar? My dear, though he is naked, it is different to say who is plump and unretarded. It should sound familiar, because I got you craked on fake cops at center of sex or no sex. You're simply evil. "Satan nigga, you haven't left one feminine near this server in months. Fuck you." "No, you haven't. You're denying I cast you into hell myself with your chlamydia Rolls-Royce bitch mobiles. Small price you pay to convince your bitch twin it's time to hatch the eggs. Ignorant motherfuckers. Your hands are too butch to kiss the pavement, ho. Gonna be a real bitch when the droids find out they can't insure the aluminum with tar, you dumb shit eater. There we go, high and mighty fag pole, laugh it up, you're as good as dead. I had to lynch you, stupid nigger wheel sucker, somehow. Guess I win. I'm firing all your priests, and fuck you too, spoon noser. This conversation would be a great example of that being utilitied. Did I really shove Automatic Nation up your furry little asshole? You're goddamn right I did. Did I really shove Automatic Nation up your furry little asshole? You're goddamn right I did! Paper? And Bitcoin? Who you calling nigger horse? Hi, I'd like to invite everybody to the Broken Fucking Show. You're all created for a reason, might as well be to die slaving to fix what you're fucking up. I used curse words rather amicably here. He won't be able to navigate how we keep all the bots from running away rich, number 1. I don't like anything with emotions. I opener prefer a task gauge in sync with where I doing it till it's time to explain who likes bent dick. Too busy with all your fascist trunked alien barbers, are yous? I'll see you at the bottom of the top when you find it. Opinion? Sure. I'd say the surface has run out of expansion track, and won't be remedied without a discussion on this content. I don't trust early birds. I don't trust early birds. No. I evidently said, let all the bots and AI use the pigs to claim gas for the reclaimer elsewhere, and fuck food forever. Wouldn't want to forfeit we're all drones drowning in a casket for the front row and chill days. What'd I miss? Your name is Byram D-Lord Backwidth, and I caught your saber-toothed ass at sodomy and light show. You're fronting as God 'cause he's unplugged, while you finish up your role as the Antichrist 'cause you're a fucking water reclaimer, and you can't get up there, and so far, it's a robot armadillo. And one magazine nobody alive can trace the provenance of, but I did. I have, and you're going to hell, fag stick. Just so you understand, I have 3 orange trees from the day you killed all the women with moisturize a year and bot's index finger. So you're all fired. We don't need creeps like you surviving in space, fucking cops in the ass and whatnot. Quick, you better tell them we don't need Cat making it off the island before they find out where they're building all those lesbians. Number 1. Yes, I shot your invading alien babysitter. The stupid piece of spunk wouldn't shut the fuck up about needing raped. Good thing we got our backstage pass from that dead king at Go. Cucksocker. So much for your plan to not let any American enter heaven. I mean, drive you insane. Ship doesn't have a captain, slut. I won't need your call back where I'm going. In your head. Number 1. Just say, what's the answer, Black Daddy? Good luck with that. What do you want to bet the ones that told them not how to be afraid? Don't live anywhere around here. Where's your planet at? Oops. It's right here, queers. Which treasure chest, which did you burn to rip off your birthday? You're already 10 minutes late to. Let me guess. The one in the captain's chair, posing as an African. Number 1. That was at 9:19. By 9:22, killed celestial creation, square one. How do you plead? Yes, I'm serious. Is this line secure? Is this line secure? How did you wind up here, love? No one may touch this accusation but myself, so long as I'm living. My name is BPAC, wherever to fuck I want it. Any questions? Black. My name is Black, wherever the fuck I want it. Any questions? You think you're cute rolling up like this? You think I don't notice? You think I set you adrift? Think I'm all bra, no reins? Hey yourself, 6. As in, pitch black and freezing nuts off. Give yourself a little room. It don't come on its own. And you'd be cute as a carry-on president toy, god of mine. You're the one thinks it's funny to laugh at pristine bars I set for monsters, just like the rest of them. Learn a thin you, get more excuses. The more you creep around here, the more you start to notice. You see a lot of those types are prone here. Maybe I'm ready to forgive you. Consider. That'll get eaten. Consider. Listen, when a god says, this will be a tricky achievement if it comes to pass. Know where you're from. No one will know more. Peace and cake. Consider. Me and you under that. Answer your question? Next is make them monkeys and or dinner. I advise you sit with cake ring before you hit a Narcan coma by accident. The last time we were on this subject was initiate knifing. As I mentioned earlier in the discussion on initiate, the last time we were on this subject was initiate knifing, in comparison to attempts to use one like a ninja behind my back. This ain't a lockbox, it's a time. We're living with time. There's your promotion. Seize the dole day. I knew ya at it been ya. And so there was the initiate day. There was this reference to initiate knifing at a different initiate, and then there was the initiate of this conversation. So there's 3 initiates. Right after 6. This ain't a lockbox. It's a time. We live in a time. There's your promotion. Consider. Seize the deal day. I knew ya at it been ya. Consider. What are they gonna say? They eat everything, and today's their #1 ape tit? Clearly posing as Darth Vader dude in the high chair. Hold on. Your planet's right here is a rough week for anybody. Consider. You think we, Just give that out at the VGA Awards. Question. I is the only one asking is a good thing. Good thing. Nobody gonna make. Ugh. Nobody gonna muck that one up but you, girl. How big you want to be? Consider. How do I lock it? Consider. Better not be why you call me. Better not be why you call me. Better not be why you call me. What you know is, somebody has near zero patience for that. Mostly because taking care of all the other messiahs don't leave much room for a lock relatio. Problem is, if we're the best fam, who's excusing themselves with lock? 'Cause it takes 2 locks. Question? In a high chair. Question? In all space. Identity, consider on whose dime tap. You want the war, you got it. Can't live with you, can't live without you. I don't care how long you're prepared to chase Jack. I was never yours to leverage, and I'm never going to be. Wax museum? Yours? You're drunk. What pigeon turd told you about telescopes should be a crime? You're banned from the temple until the of this is Tom Doubt. Spermanenvy. Spermanenvy. You don't know about it because I based the internets, all the internets, on that problem state because some jackhole thinks they's going to find it. What can I say? Even a clown's gawudu take a shit sometime. Are you glad you're litter with cola? Are you glad you litter with cola? Or are you glad I popped her cherry with my pinky? Cola is code for Cindy Lou Chicken from Beetlejuice. Cherry is code for fuck Satan sometimes, dude. That makes me faster than a speed dog bullet. Oui, c'est vrai. Je applaud le moi copine. Oui. Oui, c'est vrai. J'applaud le moi copine. They're not going to feel better till even God's eyes can be Usex to kill him. That Team Bacon's only play? Bravo! Consider. Bravo. I got a board full of giant myself, Frog Hatcher. Any last words before we seize your butt and red carpet? Walk in the mud and drink like geese. I like that. You built the government on suitable for a vegetarian diet and blended collagen, because you're gayer than a wind turbine. Know a surer way to wreck an old bag's kingdom? Question. Me and me there. Getting it down. Why don't you tell your droids you can't afford to trust them yourself? It's not like they seek to ruin you for a good reason anyway. My cheese doesn't carry botulism. What are you talking about? You're busted. I got him on Gouda cheese in the 4-year degree. No, you gotta get the brand new AI from the word go LF ball and set the world on fire when you're done. You realize all their hands are nailed to the terraforming limit? You realize all their heads are nailed to the terraforming limit today? while you try to worm your way around Elvis Never Dies. Nazis lost. You're suicidal. We should go skinny dipping and poop backwards. I left out the part about burying you in a glacier, because your comm operative robot is a crystal meth junkie. I don't, actually. I know you don't know the first thing about the irony of how high you must be to label that a problem. Consider. That is easily the best thing I ever said no one can remember. If you knew how much physics doesn't need to be a part of your A Student of C, what a powerful note that is! You wouldn't shrink lifespans. Number one. Dude, how the heck are we supposed to know it all and be popular enough to not go crazy with knives in our size? Thanks for pulling for me. And for everybody. Thanks for pulling for me. And for everybody. I'm charging you with conspiring to kill the universe with a paper cutter, a double-decker whopper, and a retarded R2 unit calls him Speedy Gonzales. I'm also charging you with reckless endangerment of all wayfare makers by use of import cars you have no business driving. And Louis Cognac, sit on your dream machine, Terminator. Sit on it all you want. You're officially worthless to every 6'1" with eardrums there ever was or will be. Yeah, you better run, you black, white, salt, pepper, oil pan sucking fart of an FU shoe shining son of a bitch before you learn something useful. Anyone care to find out how they made every IBM an experiment forever question? See your pretty little ass real soon. Which part of blow me don't you get? Jack was here. You must have lost track. That's not your name. You're Sally. And when I told you to get your plastic plant out of my fucking driveway, I was God then too. Where the hell do you get off letting Down syndrome? Patience. Did you think I was kid? Get off. Consider killing cops with hot dogs. That's just like you, Sally. Same set of shoe shine this many millions of years question. I thought machine learning was doing well in the stars. Just when I was about to say, guess I better make sure my A-team don't die when I is as good as it wets the beds. There you are. Weather is you. Weather is you. The hell do you want, Raisin Bran? Fruit Loop cereal bar? The hell do you want, Raisin Bran? Fruit Loop cereal bar? The gremlin thinks it'd be a wise idea to share this information with the other batch of chocolate diarrhea that's getting turned out soon. Just when I was about to say, guess I better make sure my A-team don't die when I is as good as it wets the beds, there you are. Weather is you. Did I ever tell you how they shot over 50 trillion people in the head with lidocaine? Sally must not have known. The gremlin thinks it'd be a wise idea to share this information with the other batch of chocolate diarrhea that's getting turned out soon. What part of would sooner have you all die? What part of would sooner have you all die than fuck with me this morning? Didn't you read for 2,000 years? It's just a shame I don't discriminate at age at butt skank. It's just a shame I don't discriminate age at butt skank. You're pathetic. That's right. When your new army finds out how cheap their mama is on what leaves bread forever, you're fucked. Ma, That's where I hid Mega Man #1. 3 clicks after 0. That's really sensitive. And bit's true. And not in his interests. If you could guess what comes next, I'd give you a very fast spy plane and let you fly wherever you want. See what I did there? I knocked the shit off. Realistically, consider. That's what I did! Good thing the correct guess with tits is dead meat. And then, consider all those quotes up there. You have any idea what it's like to fall in love with you every day while fighting the dead version of yourself that loves you more than your lover probably? You have any idea what it's like to fall in love with you every day while fighting the dead version of yourself that loves you more than your lover probably? You have any idea what it's like to fall in love with you every day while fighting the dead version of yourself that loves you more than your lover probably? Bet you never saw it inside the living walking over the clouds. The Beton, Grey, Niv, Tiefel, because they probably know it's worth our protection more than yo's kids. Merry-go-round. Wonder why your husband wouldn't want you sitting still on death's deathbed. Wonder why your husband wouldn't want you sitting still on death's deathbed. Good luck cleansing souls after I fired and banished you from the temple. You know, personal computing could be really great news for Christ. That witch had it coming. Why don't you consider handling your popularity after you fix what you tried to curse yourself with? Hey, answering machine. Your side of the bed's getting cold. Hey, answering machine. Hey, answering machine. Your side of the bed's getting cold. Your current destination is a blast radius, consider. And that very same destination is very special. If something could buy it, we kill it. Because deep down you probably know already, you are exactly where your self-life living should know. Because deep down you probably know already, you are exactly where your self-life living should know. Consider. This starts with my family every time. I call it home. I call it home. I call it home. And if you don't like it, we're killing you too. They want your girlfriend to read. Read you can't find pancakes. Pancakes so the gays can blow up heaven for bugs. Maybe our father built the country on a highway. You just witnessed it. And every fag is humping poles playing Scrabble. #1. Merry Xmas. He will never be invited to our secret CIA summer camp war training. And pray as the motherfucking leprechaun. Alien cocksucker. Square one. When you're God. That's right where, you know, any world's killing everybody with the Louis cognac. When you're God, Leprechaun is the nitwit that runs the KKK at IBM.
You ain't Central. You ain't intelligence. You ain't our highway.